Emma Parker stood on the porch of her childhood home, keys dangling from her fingers. The familiar smell of pine trees and damp earth filled her lungs as she hesitated before the chipped blue door. 15 years had passed since she'd last set foot in Oak Ridge, a small town nestled in the rolling hills of Vermont, where everyone knew everyone's business. Now, at 35, she had returned only because she had no choice. Her father's lawyer had called 3 days ago. "I'm sorry to inform you that Harold Parker has passed away," Mr. Grayson had said, his voice formal but kind. "The funeral is scheduled for Saturday, and I need to discuss the matter of his will with you and your brother as soon as possible." Emma hadn't cried. The complicated relationship with her father had dried up any tears long ago. When she left Oak Ridge at 20, promising never to return, Harold had told her she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Maybe he was right. The promising journalism career in Boston she'd sacrificed everything for had fizzled into a string of freelance gigs and a cramped apartment she could barely afford. She finally pushed the door open. The house looked smaller than she remembered. Worn furniture, faded wallpaper, the persistent smell of cigarettes her father never quit smoking despite the doctor's warnings. Nothing had changed, yet everything felt different. Look who finally showed up. The voice from the kitchen doorway made Emma freeze. Her brother Michael leaned against the frame, arms crossed, his face harder than she remembered. The boyish features she recalled had been replaced by a weathered look, lines around his eyes that made him appear older than his 33 years. "Hi, Mike," she said, putting her bag down. "I came as soon as I heard." "You mean as soon as you heard about the will?" His tone was cold, biting. "Not for the 15 years Dad needed you. Not when he got sick. But now that there might be something in it for you." Emma Parker returns to Oak Ridge. The accusation hung between them, sharp and painful. Emma took a deep breath. "That's not fair. You know why I left." "I know you abandoned your family," Michael countered. "I know Dad called you when he first got the cancer diagnosis 3 years ago, and you couldn't even be bothered to return his calls." "He called once," Emma said, her voice rising. "One voicemail that said, 'It's your father. Call me back.' After years of silence. How was I supposed to know he was sick?" Michael laughed without humor. "Maybe if you'd bothered to stay in touch, you would have known. Maybe if you'd visited even once, you would have seen how he was wasting away." Guilt twisted in Emma's stomach, but she pushed it away. "I stayed away because he made it clear I wasn't welcome after I chose my career over taking over the family hardware store. That was his ultimatum, not mine." Michael pushed off from the doorframe and walked into the living room, picking up a framed photo from the mantelpiece. It showed a younger Harold with his arms around both children at a summer barbecue. Emma couldn't remember the last time her father had hugged her like that. He changed, Emma. After the diagnosis, he was different, more reflective. He talked about you all the time, wondering what you were doing, if you were happy. "He could have called more than once," Emma replied, but her voice lacked conviction. "Pride." Michael shook his head. "The same pride you inherited. 2 stubborn Parkers, both waiting for the other to make the first real move." Emma looked around the room, noticing for the first time the small changes: a prescription bottle on the side table, a hospital schedule pinned to the corkboard, an oxygen tank tucked discreetly in the corner. "The funeral's tomorrow," Michael said, setting the photo down. "Mr. Grayson wants to meet us at his office on Monday about the will." Emma nodded, then gestured toward the stairs. "Is my old room still exactly how you left it? Dad never changed a thing." Michael's voice softened slightly. "Even kept those ridiculous band posters on the wall." For some reason, this detail broke something in Emma. The thought of her father preserving her room, as if waiting for her return, made her throat tighten. "I'm going to freshen up," she managed to say, grabbing her bag and heading upstairs before Michael could see the tears that had suddenly appeared. Her old bedroom was indeed untouched, a time capsule from her teenage years. Posters of bands she no longer listened to, books she'd once devoured, even the purple bedspread she'd saved babysitting money to buy. She sat on the edge of the bed, running her hand over the familiar pattern. On the nightstand sat a photo she'd forgotten about. Emma at her high school graduation, Harold standing proudly beside her. His arm was around her shoulders, and they were both smiling. It was before everything fell apart, before the arguments about college and her future turned into unbridgeable chasms. She picked up the frame, noticing a folded piece of paper tucked behind it. Curious, she pulled it out and unfolded it. It was a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. Her first published article from her college newspaper, a piece about local businesses struggling during the recession. She had never sent this to her father. He must have found it somehow, kept it all these years. The realization that her father had tracked her career, had cared enough to preserve this small achievement, hit Emma like a physical blow. She clutched the clipping, remembering how proud she'd been of this first step toward her dreams. Dreams her father had claimed were foolish and impractical. Outside her window, she could see Michael in the driveway, unloading groceries from his truck. The distance between them felt both vast and paper-thin. They were strangers now, yet bound by shared history, shared blood, and shared loss. Emma carefully refolded the clipping and placed it in her wallet. Tomorrow she would bury her father. Monday she would learn what final words he had left for his children. And somewhere in between, she would have to figure out how to bridge 15 years of silence with a brother who clearly resented her very presence. The First Methodist Church of Oak Ridge was filled to capacity. Emma sat in the front pew, rigid in her black dress, aware of the occasional glances from townsfolk who remembered the defiant girl who'd left without looking back. Michael sat beside her, a careful foot of space between them that might as well have been miles. Reverend Wilson, grayer and more stooped than Emma remembered, spoke warmly about Harold Parker, his dedication to the community, his generosity to neighbors in need, his 40 years running Parker Hardware, the store. His own father had founded in 1952. Harold believed in this town when others lost faith, the Reverend said. During the economic downturn, when businesses were closing left and right, he extended credit to families who couldn't pay, donated supplies to the school when their budget was cut, and never once complained about the sacrifice. Emma shifted uncomfortably. This portrait of selfless community pillar didn't align with the stubborn, unyielding man she remembered. The father who had coldly told her she was choosing strangers over family when she announced her plan to study journalism instead of business. After the service, a reception followed at the community center. Emma found herself cornered by Mrs. Winters, her former English teacher, who had always encouraged her writing. "I followed your work, you know," the older woman said, patting Emma's arm. "I've read many of your articles online. That piece you did about the fishing industry in Massachusetts was particularly moving." "Thank you," Emma said, genuinely touched. "I didn't know anyone here kept track." Mrs. Winters gave her a knowing look. "Your father kept track most of all. He had a folder with printouts of everything you published. Brought it to the Senior Center Book Club once, proud as a peacock, though he'd never admit it to you." Before Emma could process this, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find a man about her age with a familiar face. "Emma Parker. Never thought I'd see you back in Oak Ridge." It took her a moment to place him. "Jason Mercer? Wow, you look different." The lanky boy who'd been her lab partner in chemistry had filled out, his formerly awkward features settled into a handsome face. "Small town life agrees with me," he said with an easy smile. "I took over my dad's accounting firm 5 years ago. Got 2 kids now, if you can believe it." "That's wonderful," Emma said, surprised to find she meant it. There had been a time when the thought of being stuck in Oak Ridge had terrified her. Now, seeing Jason's contentment, she felt a twinge of something like envy. "Your dad was a good man," Jason continued. "When my wife Sarah wanted to start her bakery, the banks wouldn't take a chance on us. Your father co-signed the loan, said he believed in investing in Oak Ridge's future." Emma nodded, not knowing what to say. It seemed everyone had a story about Harold Parker's generosity, everyone except his own daughter. Across the room, Emma spotted Michael deep in conversation with an elderly couple. His expression was strained, his shoulders tense. She made her way toward him, catching the end of what appeared to be an awkward exchange. "Assured us the store would stay open," the elderly man was saying. "We depend on Parker Hardware. The nearest home improvement store is 40 minutes away in Burlington." "I understand your concern, Mr. Holloway," Michael replied, "but I can't make any promises yet. There are complications with the estate." "There you are," Emma interrupted, sensing Michael's discomfort. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but the caterer needs to speak with us." The elderly couple nodded politely and moved away. Michael gave Emma a surprised look. "Thanks for the rescue," he said, his first words to her that didn't contain an accusation. "What was that about?" Emma asked. Michael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it transported Emma back to their childhood. Dad apparently told half the town that Parker Hardware would stay open no matter what. They don't realize. Realize what? Michael lowered his voice. The store's been struggling for years. Dad remortgaged the house to keep it afloat after his first round of treatments left him too weak to work full-time. He never wanted anyone to know how bad things got. Emma felt the ground shift beneath her. I had no idea. That's the point, Em. You weren't here to have any idea. The brief moment of connection evaporated. I've spent the last 3 years trying to run the store and take care of Dad. Do you know how many nights I slept on that uncomfortable couch to be near him when the pain got bad? The raw pain in his voice silenced any defense Emma might have offered. I'm sorry, she said simply. Sorry doesn't change anything. Michael's eyes darted around the room. All these people think Dad was the heart of this community, and he was, but they don't know he died worried about failing them. About failing me. Emma followed his gaze around the room, seeing the townspeople in a new light. Not as the small-minded provincials she'd been so desperate to escape, but as an extended family her father had nurtured and protected. After most guests had departed, Emma found herself helping Michael pack up leftover food. They worked in silence until he spoke without looking at her. Why did you really come back, Emma? After all this time? She considered deflecting, but opted for honesty. At first, it was just because Mr. Grayson called. But then, I realized I needed to say goodbye, even if it's too late. Michael nodded slightly, as if accepting this answer even if he didn't fully believe it. Where are you staying tonight? He asked, surprising her. I booked a room at the Oak Ridge Inn. Cancel it. You can stay at the house. It's still your home too. Emma hesitated, then nodded. Thank you. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She wandered downstairs in the dark, making her way to her father's study, a room that had once been off-limits to the children. The door creaked as she pushed it open. Moonlight filtered through the window, illuminating the cluttered desk. Family photos lined the walls, school pictures, holiday gatherings, fishing trips with Michael. And to Emma's surprise, more recent photos she'd never seen. A framed copy of her journalism school graduation announcement, a press badge photo clearly enlarged from her company website, a printed social media picture of Emma accepting a regional reporting award 3 years ago. He had been watching her live from afar, preserving connections she thought had been severed. The realization made her chest tight with grief, not just for her father's death, but for the relationship they might have rebuilt if either of them had swallowed their pride. Emma lowered herself into her father's worn leather chair and opened the top desk drawer. Inside was a folder labeled simply Emma. With trembling hands, she opened it to find dozens of her articles, from college papers to her most recent pieces, all neatly clipped or printed, some with Harold's handwritten notes in the margins. Tears blurred her vision as she read one note beside a particularly challenging investigative piece she'd written about pension fraud. That's my girl. Always fighting for the little guy. Words of approval he'd never spoken directly to her. He read everything you wrote. Emma jumped at Michael's voice from the doorway. He stood watching her, his expression unreadable. I found him in here sometimes, reading your articles over and over, Michael continued, stepping into the room. He was so proud of you, Emma. Too proud to tell you. And I was too stubborn to reach out. Emma whispered, wiping her tears. We wasted so much time. Michael moved to the window, looking out at the moonlit yard. Tomorrow we find out what Dad wanted for us. For the store. For this house. I don't know if I'm ready. Emma looked down at the folder of articles, at the physical proof of her father's silent love. Whatever it is, I think he meant it to bring us together, not push us further apart. Michael turned to face her, his expression softening just slightly. I guess we'll find out. Mr. Grayson's law office hadn't changed in 15 years. The same dark wood paneling, the same framed diplomas, even the same ancient secretary who smiled with recognition when Emma walked in. Michael arrived 5 minutes later, dressed in a suit that looked slightly too big, as if he'd lost weight recently. Thank you both for coming, Mr. Grayson said, gesturing to the chairs across from his desk. I know this is a difficult time. The elderly lawyer adjusted his glasses and opened a folder with deliberate care. Emma noticed his hands trembled slightly. He must be close to retirement age now. Your father was very specific about his wishes, Mr. Grayson began. He revised this will several times in the last year as his health declined. The final version was signed just 6 weeks ago. Emma glanced at Michael, who sat rigidly beside her, his jaw clenched. She wondered if he knew what was coming. I'll begin with the simple parts, Mr. Grayson continued. The house at 415 Maple Street is to be divided equally between you both. Should one of you wish to buy out the other's share, that option is available. Michael nodded, unsurprised by this news. As for Parker Hardware, Mr. Grayson paused, looking directly at them both. Harold was quite specific. The business is to be either run jointly by both his children or sold, with proceeds divided equally. What? Michael stood up abruptly. That can't be right. Dad always said the store would be mine. I've been running it for 3 years while he was sick. Mr. Grayson waited patiently for Michael to sit back down. I understand this is upsetting, Michael. Your father explained his reasoning in a letter he asked me to read to you both. The lawyer pulled out an envelope and carefully removed a handwritten letter. Emma recognized her father's precise penmanship immediately. To my children, Mr. Grayson read, if you're hearing this, I've finally lost my battle with this damn cancer. I'm sorry for leaving things unsettled between us. Michael, son, you've been my right hand these past years. You sacrificed your own plans to help me when I needed it most. Your dedication to the family business has made me prouder than I could express. Emma, my stubborn girl, so like me it hurts. I watched your career from afar, collecting your articles, hearing about your successes. I should have told you how proud I was. My silence was my failing, not yours. I've made a decision that may seem unfair to both of you. Parker Hardware must either be run together by my children or sold. Here's why. Michael, you have the practical knowledge to run the store, but Emma has the business mind and writing skills to market it in ways I never could. Together, you could not only save our family legacy, but transform it. The store is struggling. I'm not leaving you a gold mine, but a challenge. If you choose to sell, I understand. But if you choose to work together, I believe you could heal not just the business, but the rift between you that has been my greatest sorrow. Whatever you decide, know that I loved you both, even when I couldn't find the words to say it. Harold Parker. Silence filled the office as Mr. Grayson refolded the letter. Emma felt tears threatening again, hearing her father's voice so clearly in those words. Michael stood up again, pacing the small office. This is ridiculous. Emma hasn't been part of this family or this town for 15 years. She knows nothing about running a hardware store. That's true, Emma acknowledged quietly. But I do know about business strategy and marketing. I've written dozens of articles about small businesses surviving in the digital age. Articles, Michael scoffed. That's different from actually doing the work. Mr. Grayson cleared his throat. There's one more detail. Harold left funds to cover 6 months of operation for the store, regardless of your decision. He wanted to ensure you had time to consider your options without financial pressure. 6 months, Michael muttered. The way things are going, the store might not last that long anyway. Emma looked at her brother's defeated posture, suddenly understanding the weight he'd been carrying. How bad is it really? Michael sighed, collapsing back into his chair. The big box store in Burlington is killing us. Online shopping too. Dad refused to establish any web presence. Said hardware was about touching the tools, getting advice in person. He wasn't wrong about the personal touch being important, Emma said carefully. But there are ways to bring that same experience online. For the first time, Michael looked at her with something other than resentment. A flicker of curiosity, perhaps. What do you mean? Video tutorials featuring real staff, online ordering with in-store pickup, virtual consultations for home projects. I've seen small businesses thrive by combining their local expertise with digital convenience. Mr. Grayson smiled slightly, watching the exchange. It seems your father may have been onto something. After the meeting, Emma and Michael walked silently to the town square where their cars were parked. The Parker Hardware sign was visible from where they stood, faded red letters on a weathered wooden background, unchanged since their grandfather's time. What are you thinking? Emma finally asked. Michael stared at the store, hands in his pockets. I'm thinking Dad manipulated us from beyond the grave. Emma couldn't help but laugh. That does sound like him. A ghost of a smile crossed Michael's face. You know I can't buy you out, even if I wanted to. The store's debts would make that impossible. And I can't buy you out because journalism doesn't exactly make you rich, Emma admitted. So it's either work together or sell. Who would even buy a struggling hardware store in a town most people have never heard of? Emma thought for a moment. Actually, I wrote a piece last year about investment groups buying up small-town businesses, stripping them for parts, and firing all the staff. Is that what you want for Parker Hardware? For Oak Ridge? Michael's expression darkened. Of course not. The store employs 5 people who've worked there for decades. Mrs. Collins at the register is a widow with no other income. Dave in plumbing has a kid with special needs who needs the health insurance. Emma was surprised by his detailed knowledge of the staff's lives, then realized she shouldn't be. This was how their father had always operated, treating employees like family. So, she said carefully, what if we try? For 6 months. If it doesn't work, we can still sell. Michael studied her face. You'd stay in Oak Ridge for 6 months? What about your life in Boston? Emma thought about her cramped apartment, the freelance assignments that barely covered her bills, the friends who had all moved on to marriages and families while she chased stories. I can write from anywhere these days. And honestly, Boston hasn't felt like home in a long time. And after 6 months, you'll leave again. The question held more emotion than Michael probably intended to reveal. Emma realized with sudden clarity that her brother's anger wasn't just about her abandoning their father. It was about her abandoning him too. I don't know what happens after 6 months, she answered honestly. But I'm willing to find out. Michael nodded slowly. The store needs to be completely reorganized. The inventory system is a mess. The website is just a static page with our address and phone number. First things I'd tackle, Emma agreed, recognizing his words as tentative acceptance of her proposal. Dad's office at the store is empty, Michael added. You could use that space. I'd like that. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. 15 years of separation, making even simple conversation feel foreign. I should get back to the house, Michael finally said. There's a lot to sort through. I'll help, Emma offered. I can start on the attic if you want. For the first time since her return, Michael's expression softened completely. Remember when we used to play up there during rainstorms? Dad built us that fake pirate ship out of old crates. Emma smiled at the memory. He'd bring us hot chocolate and pretend he needed to pay a toll to board our ship. 1 marshmallow per passenger, Michael recalled, a genuine smile breaking through. As they walked toward their separate cars, Michael paused. Dad's lawyer was right, you know. The old man knew exactly what he was doing with that will. Emma nodded. He always played the long game. 6 months, Michael said, almost to himself. I guess we'll see if Parker's siblings can work together better than they've stayed in touch. I guess we will, Emma replied, feeling something shift between them. Not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but an opening where there had only been a wall before. That evening, as Emma sorted through boxes in the attic, she found a dusty photo album she didn't recognize. Opening it, she discovered pictures of herself and Michael as teenagers, but also more recent photos. Michael at what appeared to be business conferences, newspaper clippings about small business innovation, and surprisingly, printouts of emails. She read one dated just a year ago, from her father to someone named Professor Martinez. Thank you for sending Emma's guest lecture video. Seeing her speak so passionately about preserving local journalism gives me hope. Perhaps she could apply that same passion to preserving other local institutions someday. I continue to hope for reconciliation before it's too late. Emma closed the album, understanding dawning. Her father hadn't just been tracking her career. He'd been actively planning for a future that included her return, even as his own future grew uncertain. From downstairs, she heard Michael call her name. Emma? I ordered pizza. Come down before it gets cold. Such a simple offer, yet it felt like the first brick in rebuilding something they had both thought was permanently broken. Emma carefully placed the album in the box marked Keep and headed downstairs, toward whatever new beginning awaited them both. Parker Hardware opened at 8 a.m. sharp, just as it had for the past 68 years. Emma arrived at 7:30, coffee in hand, surprised to find Michael already there, counting the register drawer. Morning, he said without looking up. There's an apron behind the counter if you want it. Emma glanced at the row of red aprons hanging on hooks, each embroidered with Parker Hardware in white thread. She touched one tentatively, remembering weekends spent here as a child, trailing behind her father as he helped customers find exactly what they needed. I was thinking I'd start by looking at the books, she said. Get a sense of where we stand financially before diving in. Michael nodded, still counting. Dad's office is unlocked. Financial records are in the filing cabinet. Password for the computer is taped to the bottom of the keyboard. He was old school like that. Emma headed to the small office at the back of the store. Harold's presence was palpable here, from the ancient swivel chair he'd refused to replace to the coffee mug that still held pencils, its faded logo from a 1990s trade show barely visible. She settled into the chair, feeling like an intruder in a space that had been exclusively her father's domain. The filing cabinet revealed what Michael had already implied. Parker Hardware was in serious trouble. Revenue had declined steadily over the past 5 years, while expenses had remained relatively stable. The store had been operating at a loss for nearly 2 years, with Harold's personal savings and the house mortgage keeping it afloat. Emma logged into the computer, wincing at the outdated operating system and dial-up internet connection. The website was nothing more than a digital business card, address, phone number, and store hours. The inventory system was a basic spreadsheet, many items marked with cryptic notes only Harold would have understood. At lunchtime, Michael appeared in the doorway. "Find anything hopeful?" Emma shook her head. "Not in the numbers, but I have some ideas." They walked to Mercer's Deli across the street, where Jason's mother still made the best turkey sandwiches in town. The familiar bell jingled as they entered. The Parker siblings together again. Mrs. Mercer exclaimed, wiping her hands on her apron. "What a sight for sore eyes." Emma smiled awkwardly, aware of curious glances from the other patrons. In a town this size, their attempt to save the hardware store was undoubtedly already common knowledge. Once, seated with their sandwiches, Michael finally asked, "So what are these ideas of yours?" Emma pulled out her notebook. "First, we need to understand who our customers actually are. Dad seems to have run mostly on intuition and personal relationships." "That worked for decades," Michael said defensively. "It did," Emma agreed, "but times change. The big box stores know exactly who their customers are, what they buy, when they buy it. We need that same intelligence. And how do we get it without their massive data systems? We talk to people. We create a simple loyalty program that tracks purchases. We survey customers about what they need that we don't carry." Emma took a bite of her sandwich. "But most importantly, we need to emphasize what makes Parker Hardware different, which is expertise, personalized service, community connection, the things chains can't replicate." Emma pointed out the window at a young couple walking by. "See them? Millennials. They're buying houses in small towns because they're priced out of cities. They want authentic experiences and personal connections, but they also want convenience." Michael considered this. Dad always said hardware wasn't something you could sell online. People need to touch the tools, test the weight. "They do," Emma agreed. "But they also want to know what's in stock before driving across town. They want video tutorials on how to use what they buy. They want to text a question to their local expert instead of watching random YouTube videos." For the first time, Michael looked genuinely interested. "So we modernize without losing what makes us special." "Exactly." Emma hesitated, then added, "but it will require investment up front. New computer system, website development, maybe even a part-time social media person." Michael's expression darkened. "With what money?" "The 6 months of operating expenses Dad left us," Emma suggested. "We invest some of it now to generate returns later." "That's a big risk. Bigger than doing nothing and watching the store fail for sure." Michael didn't answer immediately, instead looking around the deli at the familiar faces. The retired teacher in the corner, the postal worker grabbing lunch, the young mother trying to keep her toddler entertained. These were the people who had been coming to Parker Hardware for generations. "Let me think about it," he finally said. Back at the store, Emma spent the afternoon observing the operations. The elderly cashier, Mrs. Collins, knew every customer by name, often asking about their families or ongoing home projects. Dave from the plumbing department spent 30 minutes with a confused homeowner, drawing diagrams to explain how to fix a leaky shower. These interactions, Emma realized, were the store's true inventory, knowledge and care that couldn't be found at a big box retailer. At closing time, Emma found Michael in the storage room, reorganizing a shipment of power tools. "I'll do it," he said before she could speak. "The investment. But I want a detailed plan first and regular updates on the return." Emma nodded, surprised by his quick decision. "What changed your mind?" Michael gestured toward the front of the store. "Mrs. Henderson came in looking for a replacement part for a lamp her late husband bought here in 1976. Dave found it in the back, in one of Dad's miscellaneous boxes. You can't put a price on the look on her face." He paused. "That's what we're really selling, isn't it? Not just hardware. No, Emma agreed softly. Not just hardware. That evening, as they closed up shop, an unexpected visitor arrived. Jason Mercer, briefcase in hand. Heard you two might need some accounting help, he said. First consultation's free for Harold's kids. Over pizza in the back office, Jason reviewed their financial situation with professional detachment. You've got a steep climb, he admitted, but it's not impossible. The store's reputation is still strong. The building is owned outright, which eliminates a major expense. And surprisingly, your inventory is actually well matched to local demand. Harold had good instincts there. What about our idea to modernize? Emma asked. Jason nodded thoughtfully. Essential, but do it strategically. Start with a proper inventory system and basic website. Those will give you the biggest immediate return. Social media can wait a month or two until you have the foundation in place. As Jason packed up to leave, he hesitated. There's something else you should know. A real estate developer from Burlington has been asking questions around town about commercial properties. Word is they're particularly interested in this block. Michael and Emma exchanged concerned looks. Thanks for the heads up, Michael said. After Jason left, they locked up in silence, both processing this new threat. We should probably stay at the house tonight, Michael finally said. Go through more of Dad's papers. There might be something about this developer. Back at the house, Emma made coffee while Michael brought down boxes from the study. They settled at the kitchen table, the familiar smell of their father's pipe tobacco still lingering in the papers. Here's something, Michael said after an hour of searching. A letter from Burlington Development Group from 6 months ago. They offered to buy the store and the land for $300,000. Emma nearly choked on her coffee. That's way below market value, even with the store struggling. Dad wrote vultures across the top and filed it away, Michael said with a hint of pride. Didn't even dignify it with a response. As the night progressed, they fell into a rhythm, sorting papers and occasionally sharing memories triggered by what they found. The tension between them hadn't disappeared, but it had eased into something more navigable. Remember when Dad would let us camp in the backyard? Emma asked, finding an old photo of their pup tent. Michael laughed. You mean when he'd let us set up the tent, but then bring us inside after we fell asleep because he was worried about us catching cold? I never knew that part. Emma exclaimed. I always thought we'd made it through the night. Nope. He'd carry us in one at a time around midnight. Said there was no point in being uncomfortable just to prove something. Emma smiled, thinking how typical that was of her father. Practical, protective, but still willing to let his children believe in their own resilience. Around midnight, Michael found a folder labeled Future Plans. Inside was a detailed proposal for expanding Parker Hardware to include a DIY workshop space in the unused storage area behind the store. Dad was planning to offer classes, Michael said wonderingly. Basic home repair, woodworking, even a kids building series on weekends. Emma read over his shoulder. The financials look solid. This could be exactly the kind of community engagement that would set us apart. Why didn't he ever mention this to me? Michael wondered, hurt evident in his voice. Emma studied the dates on the documents. These were from right after his diagnosis. Maybe he didn't want to start something he couldn't finish. The realization hung between them. Their father had been planning for a future he knew he might not see, storing away ideas that could save his legacy. We should do it, Michael said suddenly. The workshop space. It's exactly the kind of innovation we need, and it honors what Dad wanted. Emma nodded, feeling for the first time like they had a real direction. We'll make it part of the plan. As they continued sorting papers into the early morning hours, Emma came across an unmarked envelope. Inside was a letter addressed to both of them in their father's handwriting, dated just weeks before his death. Michael, she said quietly, I think you should read this. They sat side by side on the couch, the letter between them, their father's final private words binding them together in a way his legal will never could. Dear Emma and Michael, they read, if you're going through these papers together, then my final wish has been granted. You're not just my children, you're the best parts of me divided between two people. Together, you're greater than I ever was alone. The store isn't just about hammers and nails. It's about being the place people come when they're building something new or fixing something broken. Sometimes what needs fixing isn't a leaky pipe or a squeaky door. Sometimes it's a life that's gotten off track, a dream that's been deferred too long, or a relationship that seemed beyond repair. I failed to fix what broke between us, Emma. And I let you carry too much alone, Michael. My greatest regret is that I won't see you work together, combining Emma's vision with Michael's steadfast dedication. But I believe in both of you, together and separately. You are my legacy, far more than any business. With all my love, Dad. Emma wiped away tears, looking over at Michael to find him doing the same. Without words, they shared a moment of grief and purpose that required no explanation. We should get some sleep, Michael finally said. Big day tomorrow. As Emma headed to her old room, Michael called after her. Hey, Em. She turned. Yeah, Dad was right. We're better together than apart. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was a beginning. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Emma set up a proper inventory system while Michael trained the staff on how to use it. They invested in high-speed internet, a new computer network, and a website that allowed customers to check product availability and place orders for in-store pickup. Mrs. Collins, initially skeptical of the changes, became an unexpected ally when she discovered how much easier the new system made her end-of-day tallies. Should have done this years ago, she admitted, though she still kept a handwritten sales log as backup. The biggest challenge came when Emma proposed replacing the store's decades-old layout. People know where everything is, Michael argued as they walked the aisles after closing. Changing it will just confuse them. That's the problem, Emma countered. Only the regular customers know where things are. New customers get lost and frustrated. Look at this. She gestured to a crowded aisle where gardening tools shared space with electrical supplies. There's no logic to this arrangement. Dad had a system, Michael insisted. Dad had a mental map that worked for him. We need a system that works for everyone. Their first major argument erupted over paint samples. Emma wanted to move them to the front of the store. It's a high-margin impulse purchase, while Michael insisted they stay in the back near the mixing station. The disagreement escalated until Emma stormed out, frustrated by what she saw as Michael's stubborn resistance to necessary change. She found herself walking to Oak Ridge Park, a small green space in the center of town where she had spent countless summer afternoons as a teenager. The old gazebo still stood, its white paint peeling in places. Emma sat on a bench, trying to calm her frustration. Some things never change, a voice said. Emma looked up to see Mrs. Winters approaching. You always came here when you were upset. Was I that predictable? Emma asked, making room on the bench. Creatures of habit, all of us. The older woman sat down with a sigh. How's the store coming along? 2 steps forward, 1 step back, Emma admitted. Michael and I can't agree on the changes needed. He thinks I'm being disrespectful to Dad's memory. Mrs. Winters chuckled. Reminds me of when Harold took over from his father. Old man Parker nearly had a conniption when Harold installed the first electronic cash register. Claimed it would be the ruin of personal service. Emma looked at her in surprise. Dad never told me that. Of course not. Once he became the established generation, he conveniently forgot his own revolutionary days. Mrs. Winters patted Emma's hand. Every generation thinks they invented change, dear. And every generation resists it once they've found their comfort zone. So what do I do? Back down. Find the middle path. Honor the past while building the future. That's the true Parker way, whether Harold would admit it or not. When Emma returned to the store, she found Michael reorganizing the paint chip display at the front of the store. I thought you wanted them in the back, she said cautiously. Michael shrugged. I did some research. Most hardware stores do put them up front. Makes sense to let people browse while waiting for keys to be cut or for help with something else. It was as close to an apology as she was likely to get. Need help? She offered. They worked side by side in companionable silence until Michael said, I keep thinking about what Dad would do in this situation. And that's the problem. I don't actually know. I always saw him as this unchanging force. But Mrs. Collins told me earlier about how he completely revamped the tools section in the 90s when power tools started becoming more popular with homeowners. Said he stayed up 3 nights straight planning it. Emma smiled. Seems like we both had an incomplete picture of him. Maybe that's why he wanted us to do this together, Michael mused. His way of forcing us to see different sides of him and each other. The bell above the door jingled, and they looked up to see a man in an expensive suit enter, surveying the store with calculating eyes. Can I help you? Michael asked, moving toward him. Just looking around, the man replied. I'm Thomas Reed, from Burlington Development Group. Emma joined her brother, standing shoulder to shoulder in unconscious solidarity. "Interesting timing, Mr. Reed. We just found your offer letter to our father." Reed smiled thinly. "Ah, the Parker siblings. I was hoping to meet you both. Since your father's passing, I thought perhaps you might be more amenable to our offer. Family businesses are such a burden these days, aren't they?" "Not a burden," Michael replied evenly. "A legacy. A legacy that's losing money," Reed countered. "Our research shows Parker Hardware has been in the red for 8 quarters running. We're prepared to offer $350,000 now. That's $50,000 more than we offered your father. Still below market value," Emma noted. Reed shrugged. "The market determines value, Miss Parker. And right now, a struggling hardware store in a town that's barely on the map isn't commanding premium prices." "We're not interested," Michael said firmly. "I'll leave my card," Reed replied, placing it on the counter. "When you realize the inevitable, give me a call. Our offer won't stay open indefinitely." After he left, Emma picked up the card. "We need to find out more about these people. What are they planning for this location?" Michael nodded grimly. "Jason might know. His firm handles accounts for several businesses in town." Over the next few days, a picture emerged. Burlington Development Group had been systematically purchasing commercial properties in small towns throughout the state, consolidating them into strip malls anchored by chain stores. "They've done this in 3 other communities," Jason explained when he stopped by the store after hours. "Buy up the block, tear down the original buildings, put up a cookie-cutter shopping center. The local businesses either close or become tenants paying triple what they did before. And the town allows this?" Emma asked, outraged. Jason sighed. "Small-town governments are easy targets. They promise tax revenue, construction jobs. By the time people realize what they've lost, it's too late." The threat from Burlington Development added urgency to their efforts. Emma accelerated the marketing plan, creating a support local campaign that highlighted the store's history and expertise. Michael focused on implementing their father's workshop idea, converting the underutilized storage area into a space where customers could learn hands-on skills. "We need a name for it," Michael said as they painted the walls of the new space one Sunday afternoon. "How about Harold's Workshop?" Emma suggested. Michael considered it. "I like the sentiment, but Dad would hate having his name plastered on anything." Emma laughed. "True. He'd probably just call it the workshop and act like that was perfectly descriptive. So that's what we'll call it," Michael decided. "Simple. Straightforward. Dad would approve." As they continued painting, Emma asked a question that had been on her mind. "What did you want to do before all this? You said you gave up your plans to help Dad." Michael was quiet for a moment. "I was studying architectural engineering at UVM. Had an internship lined up with a firm in Boston, actually." "Boston?" Emma was surprised. "We could have been in the same city all this time." "Maybe that's why I never told you," Michael admitted. "I was still angry that you left. Didn't want you to think I was following you." "When did you come back to Oak Ridge?" "Junior year. Dad called. Said he was feeling tired all the time. Didn't say it was cancer, not then. Just that he could use some help at the store. I thought it would be temporary." Michael dipped his roller in paint. "By the time I realized it wasn't, it seemed too late to go back." Emma felt a familiar weight of guilt. "I should have been here too." "Maybe. Maybe not." Michael surprised her with his response. "One of us needed to live our own life, follow through on our dreams. Otherwise, what was the point of everything Mom and Dad sacrificed for us?" The mention of their mother, who had died when Emma was 12 and Michael 10, was rare. Harold had rarely spoken of her after her death, as if the pain was too great to put into words. "Do you think Mom would be proud of what we're doing?" Emma asked. Michael smiled. "Definitely. She was the original believer in Parker Hardware. Dad told me once that when they first got married and the store was struggling, she worked 2 jobs so he could keep it going." "I didn't know that." "There's a lot we didn't know," Michael said softly. "Maybe that's part of growing up, realizing our parents had whole lives, struggles, and triumphs we never saw." The grand reopening of Parker Hardware, complete with the new workshop space, was scheduled for a Saturday in early May. Emma had arranged for local press coverage and created a social media campaign that had generated surprising interest. Michael had personally called longtime customers to invite them to the event. The night before, they stayed late at the store, making final preparations. The new layout was complete, with wider aisles, better lighting, and clear signage. The workshop gleamed with new workbenches and tools donated by suppliers who valued their long relationship with the Parkers. The website had launched successfully, already generating online orders for in-store pickup. "We did it," Emma said, looking around with satisfaction. "In just 6 weeks." "Dad would be impressed," Michael agreed. "Though he'd probably complain about the fancy coffee machine in the workshop." "That was your idea." "Still," Michael laughed. "He'd say real hardware people drink bad coffee and like it." As they locked up, Emma noticed a car parked across the street. Thomas Reed, watching the store. He nodded at them before driving away. "He's not giving up," Michael noted. "Neither are we," Emma replied firmly. The reopening exceeded their expectations. A steady stream of customers filled the store throughout the day, many exclaiming over the improvements while appreciating the familiar elements they'd preserved. The workshop's first class, basic home plumbing, was filled to capacity with a waiting list for the next session. Late in the afternoon, Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman who had needed the lamp part, approached Emma. "Your father would be so proud, dear," she said, patting Emma's hand. "He always said his children were his greatest accomplishment, even when you were far away." The words brought unexpected tears to Emma's eyes. "Thank you for telling me that." As closing time approached, Michael found Emma in their father's office, now their shared workspace. "Good day," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Great day," Emma agreed. "But one good day doesn't save a business." "Always the optimist," Michael teased, then grew serious. "But you're right. This is just the beginning." Emma looked at her calendar, where she'd marked the end of their 6-month trial period. It was still 4.5 months away, but already she was having trouble imagining leaving when that date arrived. "You know," Michael said, following her gaze to the calendar, "I've been thinking about the house." "What about it?" "It's too big for just me. But if you decided to stay in Oak Ridge, it would make sense for both of us to live there. At least until we figure out the long term." The offer surprised Emma. "You'd want me to stay in the house? Even after everything?" Michael shrugged, attempting casualness. "It's your house too, and it would save us both on expenses while we pour everything into the store." It was practical, logical, so like her brother. But Emma recognized it for what it really was, an olive branch, a step toward rebuilding their relationship beyond just a business partnership. "I'd like that," she said simply. As they walked home together in the gathering dusk, Emma found herself seeing Oak Ridge with new eyes. The small-town rhythms she had once found stifling now seemed comforting. The familiar faces that had once represented limitation now reflected community. And the brother she had left behind had become someone she was genuinely coming to respect and enjoy. "One day down," Michael said as they reached the house. "Many more to go," Emma finished, realizing she was actually looking forward to it. 3 months passed in a blur of activity. The workshop had become a genuine success, with classes booked weeks in advance. Emma's marketing efforts had extended Parker Hardware's reach beyond Oak Ridge to neighboring communities, bringing in customers who were tired of impersonal big-box experiences. The store's financials, while not yet robust, had stabilized. They were no longer losing money. But the victory felt tenuous. Burlington Development Group had purchased 2 more properties on their block, including the vacant lot behind the hardware store that Harold had once considered for expansion. Thomas Reed made no secret of his continued interest in the Parker property, increasing his offer to $400,000. "He's getting desperate," Emma observed one evening as she and Michael went over the books in the kitchen. Living together had evolved from awkward to comfortable, with Emma taking charge of cooking, which Michael was hopeless at, and Michael handling the yard work, which Emma had always disliked. "Or more determined," Michael countered. "Jason says they've already submitted preliminary plans to the town council for a development that includes our location." "Can they do that?" "We haven't agreed to sell. Apparently, they're hoping to pressure us." The plans include a local hardware section inside a national chain store. They're selling it as preserving the Parker legacy while modernizing the downtown. Emma felt a surge of anger. "That's not preserving anything. It's just using Dad's name to sell their cookie-cutter mall." "I know." Michael looked troubled. "But some people in town are buying it. The promise of jobs, tax revenue, a more vibrant downtown. We need to fight this," Emma said firmly. "Not just for the store, but for Oak Ridge." Over the next few weeks, Emma put her journalism skills to work, researching the outcomes in other towns where Burlington Development had built similar projects. She created a presentation highlighting the increased traffic, the displacement of local businesses, and the broken promises of economic revitalization. Michael, meanwhile, worked his own connections. As a lifelong resident who had coached Little League and volunteered with the fire department, he had relationships throughout the community that Emma had forfeited when she left. Together, they built a coalition of small business owners and concerned citizens. The town council meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday evening in August. The main agenda item, Burlington Development Group's proposal for what they called the new Oak Ridge Center. The meeting room was packed. Emma and Michael sat near the front, their presentation ready. Thomas Reed and his team of consultants occupied the first row, their glossy brochures and architectural renderings already distributed to the council members. Mayor Wilson, a contemporary of their father's, called the meeting to order. "We have a full agenda tonight, but I know most of you are here for the Burlington Development Proposal. Mr. Reed, you have the floor." Reed's presentation was slick and persuasive. The renderings showed a modern development with uniform storefronts, plenty of parking, and green spaces that existed only in the architect's imagination. He emphasized job creation, increased tax revenue, and what he called managed growth. "Change is inevitable," Reed concluded smoothly. "The question is whether Oak Ridge will control that change or be left behind. Burlington Development offers this community a chance to preserve its character while embracing a prosperous future." When Reed finished, Mayor Wilson asked, "Does anyone wish to respond to this proposal?" Michael stood first. "Mr. Mayor, council members, neighbors, my sister and I would like to present an alternative vision for Oak Ridge's future." For the next 20 minutes, Emma and Michael tag-teamed their presentation. They showed real data from other communities, contrasting Burlington's promises with actual outcomes. They presented testimonials from business owners who had been forced out when rents tripled after similar developments. Most powerfully, they shared letters from residents of those towns lamenting the loss of character and community. "The choice isn't between progress and stagnation," Emma argued. "It's between authentic growth that preserves what makes Oak Ridge special and corporate development that could turn our town into any exit off any highway in America." Michael concluded with emotion rarely seen from him in public. "My father, Harold Parker, believed in this town when others didn't. He extended credit during hard times, sponsored Little League teams when budgets were tight, and treated every customer like family. That spirit, not just a sign with our name on it inside a chain store, is the true legacy worth preserving." The council chamber erupted in applause. Even Mayor Wilson had to tap his gavel several times to restore order. "Thank you, Michael and Emma," he said. "We'll now open the floor to public comment." For the next hour, residents took turns at the microphone. Some supported the development, citing the need for more jobs and modern retail options. But the majority spoke passionately about the character of Oak Ridge and the importance of its independent businesses. Mrs. Collins, trembling slightly but determined, approached the microphone. "I've worked at Parker Hardware for 32 years. I know every family in this town, what projects they're working on, which paint colors they prefer. Last week, a young couple came in with a broken garbage disposal. They'd been to the big store in Burlington first, where no one could help them. Dave in our plumbing department not only identified the problem, but showed them how to fix it themselves. You won't get that at a chain store, no matter what name is on the sign." As the public comments continued, Emma noticed Reed checking his phone with increasing frequency, his expression darkening. When the mayor finally called for a vote on whether to approve the preliminary development plan, Reed abruptly stood. "Mr. Mayor, if I may," he said. "In light of tonight's discussion, Burlington Development would like to withdraw our proposal for reconsideration. We clearly need to do more community outreach to address the concerns raised here." A murmur ran through the crowd. This wasn't a surrender. Reed was too smooth for that. But it was a retreat, at least temporarily. Outside the town hall, Reed approached Emma and Michael as they accepted congratulations from neighbors. "Impressive performance," he said without warmth. "But this isn't over. Development is coming to Oak Ridge, with or without Parker Hardware." "Maybe," Emma replied, "but it will happen on this community's terms, not yours." As Reed walked away, Jason Mercer joined them. "That was something else. But he's right about one thing. This isn't over. Development is coming. The question is what kind." Michael looked thoughtful. "You know, Dad's expansion plans were actually pretty progressive. The workshop is just the beginning of what he envisioned. What are you thinking? Emma asked. Maybe fighting Reed isn't enough. Maybe we need our own vision for this block, one that preserves what matters while still allowing for growth. The idea took root quickly. Over the next few weeks, Emma and Michael worked with Jason and other business owners on their street to develop what they called the Oak Ridge Heritage District Plan. The concept combined preservation of the historic storefronts with carefully planned modernization behind the scenes, shared delivery areas, coordinated online presence, even a small business incubator in the vacant lot. The 6-month mark of their agreement arrived with little fanfare. Both were too busy with the business and their community initiative to mark the occasion. It wasn't until Emma received a job offer from a digital news site in Chicago that the question of her future in Oak Ridge resurfaced. She found Michael in the workshop, teaching a weekend class on basic carpentry to a group of teenagers. She waited until the students had left before showing him the email. Senior editor position, he noted, scanning the offer. Impressive salary, too. Yeah, Emma agreed. It's a good opportunity. Michael carefully put away the tools before responding. Are you going to take it? I don't know. Emma sat on one of the workbenches. 6 months ago, I would have jumped at it. Now what? Now I'm not sure it's what I want anymore. The admission surprised even her. The store is just starting to turn around. The Heritage District Plan needs work. And, she hesitated, I've kind of gotten used to being back. Used to Oak Ridge? Or used to working with your annoying brother? Michael asked with a half-smile. Both, I guess. Though the brother is definitely annoying. They shared a laugh that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. You should take the job, Michael said, his tone serious now. We always said this was a 6-month trial. You've done what Dad hoped. Helped save the store, reconnected with me. But this was never meant to be your life. What if I want it to be? The question hung between them. Not exactly this. I still want to write, to use my journalism skills. But maybe there's a way to do that from here. Michael looked skeptical. As the editor of the Oak Ridge Weekly? That's a big step down from senior editor in Chicago. Not the weekly, Emma said slowly, an idea forming. Something new. A digital publication focused on small-town America. The issues we've been dealing with here, development pressure, preserving community character while embracing change. They're happening everywhere. There's a national story to tell. And you tell it from here? From Oak Ridge? Why not? I've got first-hand experience now, and sources across the country from my reporting days. The Heritage District could even be our first in-depth case study. Michael considered this. Dad would like that. Using your skills to tell the story of places like Oak Ridge. I'd need to travel sometimes, Emma cautioned. And I'd be working on this while still helping with the store. It wouldn't be easy. When have Parkers ever done things the easy way? Michael asked with a laugh. That evening, they sat on the back porch swing, watching fireflies rise from the lawn, just as they had as children.